My son handed me a glass of water beneath his glittering chandelier. Minutes later, my chest clenched like a fist. And I excused myself to the kitchen. That's when I saw it, the envelope with my name. $1 million insurance policy I never signed, and a small vial of clear liquid, glinting behind the salt. It wasn't indigestion pressing on my chest, it was poison. At 73, after a lifetime of raising him, I realized the cruelest truth: my own child had decided I was worth more dead than alive. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The crystal centerpiece caught the light like ice. It split my son's face into sharp fragments. I sat across from him at his dining table. The room smelled of pine candles and fresh paint. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked new. Mark wore a pressed shirt. No wrinkles. No stains. Tessa stood by the counter arranging flowers. Her nails were glossy. Her bracelet caught the light. I counted the cost in my head without meaning to. 40 years as a forensic auditor does that. You see numbers behind surfaces. You track patterns. Mark poured me water from a glass pitcher. Ice cubes clicked against the sides like small bones. He set the glass by my plate. The condensation left a ring on the wood. I lifted the glass. The water was cold. It went down smooth. Too smooth. My chest tightened. Just a flutter at first. I set the glass down carefully. Tessa smiled at me from across the room. Her teeth were very white. Mark asked if I wanted more water. I said no. My voice sounded steady. The pressure in my chest grew tighter. Not pain exactly. More like a fist closing. I told myself it was nothing. Indigestion maybe. But my pulse felt wrong. Too slow. Too heavy. I stood up. The chair scraped against tile. Mark asked if I was all right. I said I needed the restroom. He pointed down the hall. I walked slowly. My legs felt distant. In the kitchen I stopped to catch my breath. Mail lay scattered across the stone counter. Bills. Catalogs. A windowed envelope near the edge. My name showed through the plastic window. Below it a logo. Prudential Life Insurance. I picked it up. My hands were steady. Inside was a policy confirmation. Term life. Issued 3 weeks ago. Coverage amount, $1.8 million. Beneficiary, Mark Andrew Brooks. My son. The air left my lungs in a slow leak. I read it again. Same words. Same numbers. I had not applied for this policy. I had not signed anything. My chest squeezed harder now. I looked around the kitchen. Everything gleamed. Marble counters. Stainless steel appliances. A Lexus key fob sat near the sink. Designer dish soap. Imported olive oil. This kitchen cost more than my first house. Mark's consulting firm barely existed. I had seen the tax returns last year. Tessa's boutique had closed 6 months ago. Creditors still called my phone by mistake. The math did not work. I set the envelope down. My half-empty water bottle sat by the sink. Behind it a marble salt cellar. Behind that something else. A small glass vial. Clear liquid inside. 1 drop beaded at the rim. I picked it up. No label. My pulse drummed in my ears now. The symptoms. The policy. The vial. The pattern assembled itself like evidence on a table. I had testified in fraud cases for decades. I knew what staging looked like. I knew what motive looked like. This was not confusion. This was a file. I wrapped the vial in a paper towel. My coat hung on a chair nearby. I slipped the vial into the pocket. Above me a black lens watched from the ceiling. A security camera, aimed at the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator, found a sealed water bottle, twisted the cap, heard the plastic crack. I poured some into my glass. My face felt calm. My hands did not shake. 40 years of courtroom testimony teaches you control. I walked back to the dining room. Mark looked up. His smile was wide. Tessa asked if I felt better. I said yes. I lied cleanly. We ate dinner. Roast chicken. Glazed carrots. Mark talked about a new contract. Tessa talked about redecorating the guest room. I chewed slowly. I swallowed carefully. I watched the crystal centerpiece split their faces. The pressure in my chest stayed constant. Not worse. Not better. I finished half my plate. I thanked them for the meal. Mark walked me to the door. He hugged me. His cologne was strong. He said he loved me. I said it back. I drove home in silence. No radio. No distractions. My fingers gripped the wheel at 10 and 2. The way I had taught Mark when he was 16. The vial pressed against my ribs through my coat. Cold. Hard. Real. At home I locked the door behind me. I turned on every light in the kitchen. Bright task lighting. No shadows. I found a plastic evidence bag in my desk. I used tweezers to transfer the vial. I sealed it. I labeled it with date and time. Then I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I had taught Mark fractions. Where I had balanced budgets after my husband died. Where I had eaten alone for 7 years. The policy confirmation lay in front of me. The bagged vial sat beside it. My blood work results from last month sat in a file. Clean. Normal. Healthy for 73. Someone had purchased a policy on my life. Someone had access to cardiac medication. Someone had invited me to dinner. The ledger balanced in a vicious way. I did not cry. Crying solves nothing. I picked up my phone. Not 911. That brought sirens and questions. I called my attorney instead. Sandra Hale answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp even at 9 p.m. I told her what I found. I used the same tone I used for quarterly reports. Facts. Timeline. Evidence. She did not gasp. She did not soothe. She told me to bag my water glass. She told me not to wash my hands. She told me to go to the in the morning. She told me to bring everything. Then she said something else. She said I had been right 6 months ago. When I restructured my estate. When I made it irrevocable. When I wrote in the clauses. I hung up. I sat in the bright kitchen. Outside the window the street was dark. A neighbor's dog barked twice then stopped. My chest still felt tight. But my mind felt clear. Clearer than it had in years. I stood up. I made tea I would not drink. I watched the steam rise and disappear. Numbers do not lie. People do. And I had just been given the math. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Morning came without sleep. The kitchen light stayed on all night. I sat at the table watching the clock. At 7 a.m. I showered and dressed. Gray slacks. White blouse. Sensible shoes. The uniform of a woman with business to conduct. The bagged vial went into my purse. The policy confirmation folded into my wallet. My chest still felt wrong. Heavy and slow. I drove to Mercy General Hospital. The parking lot was already full. I took a ticket from the machine. The barrier lifted. I pulled through. Inside the air smelled of antiseptic. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A receptionist looked up from her computer. I told her I was having chest discomfort. She handed me a clipboard. 6 pages of forms. I filled them out in block letters. My hand cramped on the third page. A nurse called my name 20 minutes later. She took my blood pressure, pulse, temperature. Her face stayed neutral, professional. She asked what brought me in today. I told her about the chest pressure. I told her about the dizziness. I told her I might have taken something by mistake. She wrote everything down without looking up. A doctor arrived. Young, tired eyes. He listened to my heart through cold metal. He ordered an EKG, blood work, toxicology screen. I did not mention the vial yet. Evidence follows procedure. Procedure takes time. They wheeled in a machine with wires. Sticky pads went on my chest and arms. The machine beeped. Lines drew across a screen. The doctor frowned at the printout. He said my rhythm looked irregular. He said they would run more tests. A phlebotomist came next. 3 vials of blood. Purple top, red top, gray top. She labeled them with my name and birthday. The needle pinch felt distant. Unimportant. I waited in a curtained bay. Machines beeped in other sections. Someone coughed. Someone moaned. The hospital processed pain in shifts and cycles. 2 hours passed. Then 3. The doctor returned with a folder. He sat on a rolling stool. His expression had changed. More careful now. The toxicology screen showed something unexpected. Amiodarone, a cardiac medication. High levels. Clinical dose. He asked if I took heart medication. I said no, never. He asked if anyone in my household did. I said I lived alone. He asked if I had access to medication. I said only what my doctor prescribed. Blood pressure pills, calcium, nothing else. He looked at me differently then. Not like a patient, like a question. I opened my purse. I took out the evidence bag. The vial lay inside, clear and patient. I told him I found it at my son's house. I told him about the dinner. The symptoms. I told him I needed documentation. The room got quieter somehow. The doctor stood up. He called for a supervisor. A woman in scrubs arrived. Name tag said Chen. She photographed the vial, front and back. She logged it with a case number. She printed my toxicology results on hospital letterhead. She asked if I wanted to file a police report. I said yes, but not yet. I said I needed to speak with my attorney first. She gave me a folder with copies of everything. Test results, photos, timestamps, witness signatures. She told me to keep the original vial sealed. She told me not to confront anyone alone. Her voice was kind but her eyes were steady. She had seen this before. Maybe not exactly this, but close enough to know the shape of it. I thanked her. I signed discharge papers. I walked out through automatic doors. The sun was high now. Almost noon. The parking lot shimmered with heat. I sat in my car with the folder. The evidence was complete. The pattern was clear. Motive, means, opportunity, documentation. I had built fraud cases with less. I called Sandra from the parking lot. She answered immediately. I told her what the hospital found. I told her about the amiodarone. I told her I had physical evidence and blood work. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she told me to come to her office. She told me to bring everything. She told me not to call Mark. She told me not to go home yet. Her voice carried the weight of 30 years. We had worked together since before my husband died. She had seen me through estate planning and probate. She had seen me become a widow at 59. She had never heard me sound like this. I drove to her office in the financial district. 10 floors up. Corner suite. Glass walls. Sandra met me at the elevator. She wore a navy suit, pearls, reading glasses on a chain. We walked to her office without speaking. She closed the door, drew the blinds. I set the folder on her desk. She opened it like a surgeon making an incision. Slow, precise, nothing wasted. She read every page twice. She examined the vial through the plastic. She made notes on a yellow pad. Finally she looked up. She told me this was attempted murder. Not just fraud. Not just greed. This was a son trying to kill his mother. The words sat between us like stones. I did not argue. The math was clear. Sandra asked what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to call the police. I told her I wanted to press charges. I told her I wanted documentation of everything. She nodded. She picked up her phone. She called a detective she knew. Someone who specialized in financial crimes. She made an appointment for tomorrow morning. Then she made me tea I did not drink. We sat in her office as the sun moved west. She asked if I was afraid. I said no. I said I was angry. Anger felt cleaner than grief. Anger had edges. Grief just spread. Sandra told me about the trust. The one we had created 6 months ago. The one Mark did not know about yet. The one that became irrevocable the day I signed. $7.5 million in assets. House. Investments. Everything I had built. All of it locked behind protective clauses. Any felony conviction voided his inheritance. Any suspicious death voided his inheritance. Every dollar would go to a victim's fund instead. I had insisted on those terms. Sandra had thought I was being paranoid. Now she understood. I had not predicted this exactly. But I had seen the warning signs. The debt. The desperation. The entitlement. The way Mark looked at me sometimes. Like I was a problem to be solved. Like I was an asset to be liquidated. I stood up to leave. Sandra walked me to the elevator. She told me to be careful. She told me not to answer Mark's calls. She told me to sleep with my phone charged. The elevator doors closed between us. I descended alone through 10 floors of glass. Outside the air had cooled. Rush hour traffic filled the streets. People walked past carrying briefcases and coffee. The world continued like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. My son had tried to kill me. The evidence sat in my purse. Tomorrow I would give it to the police. Tomorrow the machinery would start. Tonight I would go home. I would lock my doors. I would sit in my quiet house. I would eat soup from a can. I would not cry. Crying was for people who had not seen the math. I had seen it. All of it. The numbers never lied. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The detective arrived at 9 a.m. 2 days had passed since the hospital. 2 days of locked doors and unanswered calls. Mark had texted 4 times. Just checking in, Mom. Hope you're feeling better. Love you. Call me when you can. I had not replied. Lieutenant Anna Ruiz wore a gray blazer. Rain spotted her shoulders. Her shoes were practical. She carried a leather portfolio and a phone. Her eyes moved across my living room slowly. Taking inventory. Reading the space. I offered coffee. She accepted. We sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I had bagged the evidence. Where I had spent 2 sleepless nights. Where my husband used to read the Sunday paper. I set 3 items in front of her. First, the policy confirmation from Prudential. $1.8 million. Beneficiary Mark Brooks. Second, the toxicology report from Mercy General. Amiodarone detected. Clinical levels. Third, the evidence bag with the vial. Clear liquid, 1 drop remaining. Ruiz put on reading glasses. She examined each document without speaking. Her pen moved across a notepad. Date, time, details, witness names. She photographed everything with her phone. She asked when I last saw my son. I told her about the dinner 3 days ago. The crystal centerpiece, the expensive kitchen, the water he poured, the symptoms that followed. She asked about my relationship with Mark. I told her the history without decoration. Mark had always struggled with money. His consulting firm existed mostly on business cards. Clients came and went. Contracts fell through. I had bailed him out twice in 5 years. 50,000 the first time. 30 the second. Each time he promised it was temporary. Each time the debt grew deeper. His wife Tessa had opened a boutique. Handmade soaps, artisan candles, overpriced linens. It closed after 18 months. Creditors still called looking for payment. Mark drove a leased Lexus he could not afford. They lived in a house with marble counters. The math had never worked. I had stopped asking questions a year ago. Asking only made him defensive. Defensive only made him better at lying. Ruiz wrote everything down. She asked about the life insurance policy. I told her I never applied for it. I never signed any documents. I never spoke to any insurance agent. My signature on file was forged. It had to be. She asked if Mark had access to my information. Social security number, date of birth, medical history. I told her yes. He had helped me once. 2 years ago. Filing taxes. Organizing papers. He had been so helpful. So attentive. Now I understood why. Ruiz asked about the amiodarone. I told her I did not take heart medication. Never had. Never needed to. My last physical was clean. Blood pressure normal. Heart rhythm steady. She asked if anyone close to me took amiodarone. I said no. I lived alone. My husband had died 7 years ago. Cancer. Fast and brutal. Nothing cardiac. She asked if I knew where Mark got it. I said no. But I had theories. Online pharmacies. Dark web. Foreign suppliers. Easy enough if you knew where to look. Mark was good with computers. Better than most people his age. Ruiz nodded slowly. She asked what I wanted to happen next. I told her I wanted an investigation. I wanted charges filed if evidence supported them. I wanted this documented and prosecuted. She told me the process would take time. Weeks. Maybe months. They would need to verify the policy. Interview Mark and Tessa. Trace the medication source. Pull financial records. Phone records. Computer records. She asked if I felt safe at home. I told her yes. Mark did not have a key. I had changed the locks after my husband died. She told me not to meet him anywhere alone. Not to accept food or drink from him. Not to tell him about the investigation. Her voice was calm but her meaning was clear. If Mark knew I had evidence he might panic. Panic made people dangerous. I told her I understood. She gave me her card. Cell phone. Direct line. Email address. She told me to call if anything felt wrong. If Mark showed up. If anyone contacted me. If I felt threatened in any way. Then she stood. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. Professional. She left through my front door. Rain fell harder now. Her car pulled away from the curb. I locked the door behind her. The house felt different. Not safer. Not more dangerous. Just different. Like it belonged to evidence now. I made tea and let it grow cold. Outside the window a neighbor walked a dog. The mailman delivered a catalog. Life continued its ordinary rhythm. But nothing was ordinary anymore. My son had tried to kill me. The police were investigating. The machinery of justice had started turning. I thought about Mark as a child. 7 years old, learning to ride a bike. He had fallen hard, scraped his knee. Blood ran down his shin. He did not cry. He got back on. I had been proud of his determination. Now I wondered when determination became something else. When persistence became entitlement. When want became need became justification. I had given him everything I could afford. College tuition. Seed money for his business. Bailouts when he promised to change. Each time I thought love meant second chances. Each time he learned I would always give in. I had taught him the wrong lesson. The phone rang. Mark's number. I let it go to voicemail. His voice came through the speaker. "Hey Mom, just worried about you. You have not called back. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? Call me, please. I love you." The message ended. The house went quiet. I deleted it without saving. 3 more days passed. Ruiz called on the 4th day. Her voice sounded different, sharper. They had verified the policy. Forged signature. Application filed online. IP address traced to a coffee shop. 2 blocks from Mark's office. Security footage showed him there. Laptop open. Extra coffee on the table. Timestamp matched the policy application. They had also traced the medication. Online pharmacy. Fake name on the order. Shipped to a P.O. box in a strip mall. Box registered 3 months ago. Same fake name. Same coffee shop IP. They had requested a warrant. Financial records. Computer. Phone data. Judge approved it this morning. They would execute it tomorrow. She asked if I wanted to be present. I said no. I did not need to see that. She told me they would bring Mark in for questioning. Him and Tessa both. She told me it would get harder now. The family would fracture. Friends would take sides. People would say I was overreacting. That Mark would never do this. That there must be some mistake. I told her I had been a forensic auditor. I had testified in court 47 times. I knew how this worked. Evidence did not care about feelings. Numbers did not care about family. She said she would call when they had more. I thanked her and hung up. The house felt smaller somehow. The walls pressed in. I walked through each room turning on lights. Kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom, every corner bright and exposed. I sat in my husband's old chair. The fabric still smelled faintly of him. Coffee, Old Spice, newsprint. I closed my eyes. I did not pray. Prayer required faith. I had only facts. And the facts said my son wanted me dead. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Ruiz called 3 days after the warrant. Her voice had changed again. Not sharper this time. Heavier. The financial records were worse than expected. Mark had 17 credit cards. 15 were maxed out. Total debt just over $200,000. Not counting the second mortgage. Not counting the private loan. The house they lived in was bleeding equity. Payments 60 days overdue. Foreclosure notices stacked in a drawer. Tessa's boutique had left $30,000 in unpaid bills. Vendors, landlord, suppliers still waiting. Mark's consulting income was almost fiction. 3 clients in 2 years. Total revenue barely covered his car lease. They had been living on cash advances. Robbing one card to pay another. The math had collapsed months ago. Now they were just falling. Ruiz said they brought Mark in yesterday. He came with an attorney. Young guy. Cheap suit. Public defender energy. Mark performed well. Confusion. Hurt. Disbelief. He said I must be confused about the policy. Maybe I applied and forgot. 73 was old enough for memory problems. He said the medication must have been mine. Maybe I mixed up my pills. Old people did that all the time. His lawyer nodded along, building reasonable doubt from filial concern. Tessa came in separately. She cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough moisture for sympathy. She said they were worried about me. I had seemed forgetful lately. Repeating stories. Losing track of days. They only wanted to help. The policy was for my protection. So they could handle expenses if something happened. She said Mark loved me so much. This accusation was breaking his heart. Her mascara stayed perfect throughout. Ruiz let them perform. She took notes. She recorded everything. She let them build their narrative. Then she showed them the evidence. The IP address from the coffee shop. The timestamp matching the policy application. The security footage showing Mark's face. The fake name on the P.O. box. The pharmacy shipping records. The medication traced to that exact address. Mark's story shifted. Maybe someone used his computer. Maybe someone stole his identity. Coffee shops had bad security. Anyone could have done this. His lawyer started talking about circumstantial evidence. About reasonable doubt. About elderly confusion and family misunderstandings. Tessa stopped crying. Her face went blank. She asked for her own attorney. The interview ended. Ruiz said they were building the case. But it would take time. They needed more. Phone records. Computer forensics. Witness statements. Expert testimony. She said arrests were likely. But probably not for another week. She asked how I was holding up. I told her I was fine. Fine was a lie but easier than truth. She told me Mark had been calling people. My neighbors. My former colleagues. Telling them I was sick. That I was having delusions. That he was trying to get me help. Building his defense in whispers. She told me to expect visits. Well-meaning friends checking on me. People who loved Mark and could not believe. People who thought mothers exaggerated. I told her I understood. Fraud cases always worked this way. The accused became the victim. The victim became unreliable. 2 days later the visits started. Carol from down the street knocked first. She brought banana bread wrapped in foil. She asked if I was feeling all right. She said Mark mentioned I had been confused. She said it was nothing to be ashamed of. Her mother had dementia. It happened to everyone eventually. I thanked her for the bread. I did not eat it. I threw it away after she left. My former assistant called. Janet. We had worked together for 12 years. She said Mark reached out on LinkedIn. He was worried about me. He said I was making serious accusations. That I was not myself lately. She asked if I was taking my medications correctly. I told her I was fine. I told her to talk to Lieutenant Ruiz. I gave her the direct number. Janet said she would pray for me. For clarity. For peace. She said family was sacred. Forgiveness was always possible. I thanked her and ended the call. The mailbox filled with cards. Thinking of you. Get well soon. Pastel flowers. Soft script. Gentle concern. Each one felt like a small knife. Not sharp. Just persistent. Mark's campaign was working. He was rewriting the story. Turning poison into misunderstanding. Turning evidence into elderly confusion. I sat at my kitchen table. The house was too quiet. The clock ticked above the stove. The refrigerator hummed its mechanical song. Outside a dog barked 3 times. A car door slammed. Someone laughed. Life continued for people whose sons had not tried. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I did not recognize. You are ruining his life over a mistake. He is your son. How can you do this to family? I deleted it. Another text. Different number. Old bitter woman destroying her only child. Delete. Another. You will die alone. Delete. The messages came in clusters. 5 in an hour. Then nothing. Then 10 more. Anonymous hate from people who loved Mark. Who believed his version. Who saw a confused old woman attacking her devoted son. I blocked each number. But more appeared. Ruiz called that evening. She asked if I was getting messages. I told her yes. She said they were tracking the numbers. Some linked back to Mark's contact list. Some were burner phones. She told me to document everything. Screenshot. Save. Do not respond. Harassment built the case too. It showed consciousness of guilt. People who were innocent did not need campaigns. She told me one more thing. They had accessed Mark's computer. Browser history showed searches. How long does amiodarone take to work? Can amiodarone cause sudden death? How to fake a signature on insurance forms? Do hospitals report suspicious deaths? The searches went back 4 months. This was not impulse. This was not desperation turning to panic. This was planning. Premeditation with a timeline and method. Ruiz said they would make arrests soon. Within 48 hours, she asked if I wanted to know when. I said yes. She said they would come for Mark first. Then Tessa. Conspiracy. Insurance fraud. Attempted murder. Multiple charges. Serious time. She asked if I had anyone to stay with. I said no. I was fine alone. She told me to keep my doors locked. Keep my phone charged. Call immediately if anything felt wrong. I promised I would. We hung up. The house settled around me. Old wood creaking in the foundation. Pipes ticking behind the walls. I walked through each room again. Checking locks. Drawing curtains. In my bedroom I opened the closet. My husband's jackets still hung there. 7 years and I had not moved them. I pressed my face into the fabric. The smell was almost gone. Just a ghost of coffee and aftershave. I wished he was here. Not to fix this. He could not have fixed this. But to sit with me in the silence. To be the other person who knew. That love was not always enough. That blood did not guarantee loyalty. That sometimes your child became someone else. Someone you did not recognize. Someone who looked at you and saw numbers. I closed the closet door. I got into bed fully dressed. The phone stayed on the nightstand. Volume up. Ringer on. Outside the window the street was dark. A car passed. Then another. Somewhere in this city Mark was sleeping. Or not sleeping. Maybe he was awake too. Maybe he was planning his next move. Maybe he still thought he could win. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow they would arrest him. Tomorrow the machinery would finish its work. Tomorrow my son would be in handcuffs. And I would still be breathing. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Ruiz called at 6 a.m. The arrests happened an hour ago. Mark first. Then Tessa 30 minutes later. Both were in custody now. Processing. Fingerprints. Mugshots. Arraignment by afternoon. She asked if I wanted details. I said yes. Mark had answered the door in boxer shorts. Hair uncombed. Eyes swollen. He asked what this was about. They read him his rights. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Attempted murder in the first degree. He did not resist. He asked for his lawyer. He asked if he could get dressed. They let him change. Jeans. A wrinkled shirt. No shoes allowed. Tessa screamed when they came for her. Not scared screaming. Angry screaming. She called them fascists. Brownshirts. Thugs. She said her husband was innocent. She said I was a vindictive old bitch. She said this was elder abuse in reverse. They cuffed her anyway. She went quiet in the car. Ruiz said bail hearings were this afternoon. Judge would likely set high bail. Flight risk. Serious charges. She asked if I planned to attend. I said no. Courtrooms were for later. For trials and testimony. Not for this. Not for watching them caged. She told me something else. They needed me to come in. Not to the station. To Sandra's office. There was something I needed to know. Something about timing. Her voice carried weight I could not read. I told her I would be there. She gave me a time. 10 a.m. 2 hours from now. I showered and dressed carefully. Navy skirt. White blouse. Pearl earrings. The uniform of a woman who has her papers. Sandra's office was cold. The air conditioning always ran too high. She sat behind her desk. Ruiz sat in the other chair. I took the seat between them. Sandra opened a blue folder. The same color as the trust documents. She reminded me of what we created. 6 months ago. Late March. The Eleanor Brooks Legacy Fund. Irrevocable Trust. 7.5 million. Mark as sole beneficiary upon my natural death. But protected by clauses I had insisted on. Any felony conviction voided his inheritance. Any suspicious death voided his inheritance. Every dollar redirected to a victim's fund. She had thought I was being paranoid then. Now she understood. Ruiz leaned forward. She said something I did not expect. They needed me to tell Mark about the trust. Not later. Now. Before the arraignment. Before he made any deals. Before his lawyer advised him to plead. The trust changed everything. If Mark knew the money was gone. If he knew the policy was worthless. If he knew even success meant nothing. He might cooperate. Flip on Tessa. Provide details. Make the case airtight. But more than that, he needed to understand what he had done. Not just legally. Not just morally. Financially. He had tried to kill me for money. And the money was already gone. Sandra said we could arrange a meeting. Supervised. Recorded. Lawyers present. Tomorrow if I agreed. She said I did not have to do this. The case would proceed either way. But it would be cleaner with his cooperation. Faster. More certain. I sat with the question. The room was very quiet. Outside the window traffic hummed. A siren passed. Then faded. I thought about Mark at 8 years old. Learning long division at this same table. Crying because he could not understand. I had been patient then. I had broken it into smaller pieces. Shown him the pattern. Taught him that numbers always made sense. If you followed the rules. He had learned the mechanics. But not the meaning. I told them yes. I would meet with him. I would tell him about the trust. I would show him the math. Sandra made the arrangements. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Conference room at the county jail. Mark's public defender agreed immediately. Maybe he smelled a deal. Maybe he knew his client was drowning. I went home. The house felt different again. Not threatening. Not safe. Just hollow. Like a stage after the play ends. I made soup I did not eat. I sat at the table with papers. The trust documents. 6 months old. I read them again slowly. Every clause. Every provision. The language was clear, airtight, irreversible. I had signed away his future before he tried to end mine. The timing bothered people who did not know, who thought I was being vindictive, punishing him after the fact. But the dates did not lie. March 15th, trust executed. June 20th, policy taken out. June 23rd, medication ordered. June 30th, the dinner. I had not predicted murder, but I had predicted something. Desperation. Bad choices. The kind of arithmetic that ends badly. My phone buzzed. Text from a blocked number. I hope you are happy. You destroyed your own family. I deleted it without responding. Another text. Different number. He will never forgive you. Delete. Another. You will rot in hell. Delete. The messages were fewer now. Mark's friends were quieter. Arrest made things real. Theory became fact. Whispers became evidence. I turned off my phone. The silence was immediate and complete. No buzzing, no ringing, just the clock above the stove. Just my breathing, just the house holding me. I thought about tomorrow, sitting across from Mark, telling him about the trust, watching him understand that he had killed me for nothing, or tried to, that the inheritance was already gone, that even if I had died, even if he had gotten away with it, the money would have vanished, redirected to people he had never met, victims of financial crimes, people like me, almost like me. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. I wondered what he would say. If he would cry. If he would rage. If he would finally understand that greed was a bad investment. That shortcuts always cost more. That numbers do not forgive. I went to bed early. Sleep came in pieces. Dreams of Mark as a child. Learning to swim. Afraid of deep water. I had held him. Taught him to float. Told him the water would hold him. If he trusted it. If he stopped fighting. He never learned to trust it. He fought everything. Even now. Even in handcuffs. He was still fighting. Still trying to win. But the numbers had already spoken. And numbers do not negotiate. Morning came gray and cold. I dressed in the same navy skirt. Same white blouse. Same pearl earrings. Armor made of normalcy. Sandra picked me up at 1. We drove to the county jail. A concrete building. No windows. Razor wire. Cameras. Fluorescent lights. We signed in at a desk. Metal detector. Bag search. They took my purse. Gave me a plastic card with a number. We waited in a room with plastic chairs. A woman cried into a phone behind glass. A man paced. A child colored. Finally a guard called my name. We followed him down a hallway. Gray walls. Gray floors. Everything the color of surrender. The conference room was small. A table. 4 chairs. A camera in the corner. Mark was already there. Orange jumpsuit. Handcuffs. Ankle chains. His lawyer sat beside him. Young. Tired. Overwhelmed. Mark looked at me. His eyes were red. Not from crying. From not sleeping. From realizing. Sandra sat down. I sat beside her. The guard stood by the door. The camera's red light blinked. Mark opened his mouth to speak. Sandra stopped him. She said this meeting had one purpose. Information. Not apologies. Not explanations. Just information. She opened the blue folder. She slid it across the table. Mark stared at it. He did not reach for it. Sandra told him what it contained. The Eleanor Brooks Legacy Fund. Executed 6 months ago. Irrevocable. $7.5 million. Everything I owned. Mark's face changed. Color drained. then returned. His lawyer picked up the folder. Started reading. Mark watched him. The lawyer's expression shifted. Confusion. Understanding. Horror. He whispered something to Mark. Mark shook his head. He looked at me. Finally he spoke. He asked when I did this. Sandra told him. March 15th. 3 months before the policy. 4 months before the medication. Mark did the math. I watched him do it. Watched the numbers destroy him. Watched him understand that even if he had succeeded, even if I had died, the money was already gone. Forever. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Mark stared at the folder. His hands were cuffed to the table. Metal scraped against metal when he moved. The sound was small and terrible. Sandra read the provisions aloud. Her voice was steady, clinical. Section 4.2. Beneficiary eligibility requirements. Any felony conviction dissolved the trust immediately. All assets redirected to the National Resource Center. For survivors of financial crimes. Section 4.3. Death under suspicious circumstances. Any investigation linking beneficiary to grantor's death. Automatic disinheritance. Full asset transfer to the same fund. Section 4.4. Capacity verification. Video recorded. Physician certified. 2 witnesses. Notarized. I was of sound mind. I knew what I was doing. I meant every word. Mark's lawyer kept reading. His finger traced the lines. Looking for loopholes. Finding none. Irrevocable meant what it always meant. No changing. No reversing. The door was locked. The key was melted down. Mark looked up at me. His face held something I had not seen. Not anger. Not panic. Something colder. He asked why I did this. His voice was quiet, careful. I told him the truth. Because I knew him. Because I had watched him for 40 years. Because the pattern was clear. Debt. Lies. Bailouts. More debt. Each time promising to change. Each time getting worse. I told him I loved him. But love was not blindness. Love was not stupidity. I had worked fraud cases my entire career. I knew what desperation looked like. I knew what people did when money ran out. When options narrowed. When the walls closed in. I did not predict murder. But I predicted something bad. Something final. Something that required protection. Not for me. For the money itself. So it could not be used as a weapon. Mark's face twisted. He said I had ruined everything. That I had destroyed his life. That he had done this for us. For our family. For our future. The lies came easily even now. Even with evidence stacked against him. Even in handcuffs. His lawyer touched his arm. Told him to stop talking. But Mark kept going. He said Tessa was pregnant. They needed money for the baby. For a bigger house. For a better life. He said I was old. I had lived my life already. Had my husband. My career. What did I need $7 million for? To sit in a house alone. To die with money in the bank. It was selfish. It was cruel. I should have helped. I should have given more. His voice rose with each sentence. The guard shifted his weight. Sandra closed the folder. She told Mark that Tessa was not pregnant. Medical records from her booking. Routine exam. Negative result. She told him the baby was another lie. Another piece of the performance. Another way to justify. Mark stopped talking. His mouth stayed open. No sound came out. His lawyer looked down, studying his own hands, probably wondering how he got this case. Probably counting hours until it was over. Sandra continued. She told Mark about the cooperation offer. The prosecution was willing to negotiate. If he provided full testimony. If he detailed the planning. If he confirmed Tessa's involvement. They would recommend reduced charges. Conspiracy instead of attempted murder. 15 years instead of life. Possibility of parole. His lawyer perked up. This was something he could work with. This was a lifeline. Mark asked what they needed. Sandra listed it. Timeline. Whose idea? Who did what? The pharmacy orders. The policy application. The planning conversations. The text messages. Everything. Complete cooperation. Mark looked at me again. He asked if I wanted him to do this. If I wanted him to testify. I told him it was not about want. It was about consequences. He made choices. Now he faced them. The trust was designed for exactly this. To remove the incentive. To make the crime pointless. Even in success. He had tried to kill me for money. The money was already gone. That was not punishment. That was mathematics. Mark's eyes filled. Tears ran down his face. He said he was sorry. He said he did not mean it. He said the debt made him crazy. The pressure. The fear. Tessa pushed him. Convinced him. It was not really his idea. He was weak. Not evil. Just weak. The apology came in pieces. Broken. Desperate. I sat very still. I did not reach across the table. I did not comfort him. I had done that too many times. After the first bailout. After the second. Each time accepting the apology. Each time believing the change. Each time wrong. Sandra asked if he would cooperate. Mark nodded. His lawyer said they needed time. To review the offer. To discuss. Sandra said they had 24 hours. After that the offer disappeared. Trial. Full charges. No deals. The meeting ended. The guard unlocked Mark's cuffs from the table. Led him toward the door. Mark looked back once. His face was wet. His jumpsuit hung loose. He looked small. Like a child caught stealing. Not a man who planned murder. The door closed. Sandra packed the folder. We walked back through gray hallways. Gray floors. Gray walls. The woman was still crying on the phone. The child still coloring. The man still pacing. Outside the air was warm. The sun hurt my eyes. Sandra asked if I was all right. I said yes. Another lie. Easier than explanation. She drove me home. We did not talk. The radio played softly. Classical music. Strings. Something sad and beautiful. At my house she walked me to the door. She asked if I wanted her to stay. I said no. I needed quiet. She hugged me. Her perfume was expensive. Floral. Clean. She told me I did the right thing. I nodded. Right was not the same as easy. Inside the house was cool. The curtains were drawn. I turned on one lamp. Soft light. Warm light. I sat in my husband's chair. The fabric still held his shape. 7 years and the impression remained. I thought about Mark's tears. How easy they came. How practiced they looked. 40 years of motherhood. 40 years of believing. 40 years of second chances. All of it leading here. To a conference room in a jail. To a trust that locked him out. To consequences he could not charm away. My phone buzzed. Text from Sandra. Mark's lawyer called. They were taking the deal. Full cooperation starting tomorrow. Sentencing in 6 months. Probably 12 to 15 years. Tessa was fighting. She wanted a trial. She thought she could win. Thought a jury would believe her. She was wrong. But she would learn that slowly. I set the phone down. The house settled around me. Old wood. Old floors. The sound of years passing. I made tea. This time I drank it. Hot. Plain. No sugar. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I found the policy. Where I bagged the vial. Where I called Sandra. Where everything changed. Or maybe nothing changed. Maybe it had always been heading here. To this quiet. This ending. To a son in prison. To a mother alone. To a family that was not a family. Just people connected by blood. And blood was not enough. I washed my cup. Dried it. Put it away. The kitchen was spotless. Everything in its place. Outside the window the sun was setting. Orange light through the trees. A dog barked. A car passed. The world continued. It always did. I walked through the house. Turning off lights. Locking doors. In my bedroom I changed into pajamas. Soft cotton. Worn thin. I got into bed. The sheets were cool. The pillow familiar. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow Mark would start talking. Tomorrow the case would strengthen. Tomorrow would bring more evidence. More proof. More certainty. But tonight I was just tired. Tired of numbers. Tired of patterns. Tired of being right. Sleep came slowly. When it came it brought no dreams. Just darkness. Just quiet. Just the simple mercy of not thinking. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. 6 months passed like water through a drain. Slow. Then sudden. Then gone. Mark testified in October. The courtroom was half full. Curious strangers. A few reporters. Tessa's family in the back row. I sat behind the prosecution table. Sandra beside me. Ruiz 2 rows back. Mark wore a suit his lawyer provided. Gray. Cheap fabric. Loose at the shoulders. His hair was shorter. His face thinner. Jail had worn him down to something smaller. The prosecutor asked him to describe the plan. Mark's voice was quiet at first. Then steadier. Practiced. He said the debt became unbearable last spring. Collection calls every day. Threats of foreclosure. Repossession. Tessa had found the life insurance company online. She researched policies for elderly parents. Found ones that did not require medical exams. Just signatures. Just paperwork. She said it was common. Children taking out policies on aging parents. For protection. For final expenses. Nothing suspicious about it. Mark said he resisted at first. But Tessa kept pushing. She showed him the numbers. 1.8 million. Enough to pay everything. Enough to start over. Enough to finally breathe. She said I was old anyway. 73. Already lived a full life. Had a good marriage. A good career. What did I need more time for? The courtroom was silent. Someone coughed. A chair creaked. The prosecutor asked about the amiodarone. Mark said Tessa ordered it. Used a fake name. A P.O. box. She had worked in a pharmacy during college. She knew what medications did. She knew amiodarone looked natural. Heart rhythm problems in elderly women. Common. Expected. Not suspicious. The prosecutor asked who put it in the water. Mark said they both did. They argued about it beforehand. Both scared. Both desperate. Finally agreeing. Tessa dissolved the pills. Mark added it to the pitcher. The one with the ice cubes. The one he set beside my plate. He said I almost did not drink it. I asked for the restroom. Went to the kitchen instead. They watched on the camera. Watched me find the mail. The policy confirmation. Watched me take the vial. Watched me switch bottles. Mark said they panicked then. They knew I knew. They knew it was over. But they could not call it off. Could not take it back. They decided to deny everything. Paint me as confused, forgetful, a mother imagining threats from her desperate son. The prosecutor asked about the texts. The harassment after my accusations. Mark said some were his. Some were Tessa's. Some were friends they recruited. They thought pressure would make me stop. Make me doubt myself. Make me withdraw the complaint. He was wrong. The defense attorney cross-examined. Young woman. Sharp suit. Sharper voice. She asked if Tessa forced him. If he was afraid of her. If he was really guilty. Mark said no to all of it. He said he made his own choices. He said he was responsible. He said he deserved punishment. The attorney looked frustrated. She had wanted him to fight. To blame Tessa entirely. To paint himself as victim too. But Mark had already lost. He knew it. The plea deal was signed. 12 years. Possibility of parole. All he had left was truth. Or something close to it. Tessa's trial came in November. She wore pastel colors. Soft makeup. Her lawyer built a story of innocence. A devoted wife manipulated by a desperate husband. She had no idea about the policy. No idea about the medication. No idea what Mark was planning. She was as shocked as anyone. The prosecution destroyed her gently. They showed the computer searches on her laptop. Life insurance policies for elderly parents. Amiodarone dosage and effects. How to avoid detection in poisoning cases. They showed the P.O. Box application. Her handwriting. Her fake signature. They showed text messages between her and Mark. Discussing timing. Discussing dosage. Discussing how to act grieving at my funeral. They showed her purchase history. Funeral dress bought 2 weeks before the dinner. Black. Expensive. Already altered. The jury took 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy. Fraud. Attempted murder. Sentencing came in December. Mark got 12 years as promised. Eligible for parole in 8. Tessa got 18. No deal. No cooperation. No reduction for remorse. The judge was a woman in her 60s. Reading glasses. Gray hair pulled back. She looked at Tessa without expression. She said greed was a choice. Murder was a choice. Targeting a family member made it worse. Not better. She said rehabilitation required acknowledgement. Tessa had acknowledged nothing. 18 years. Tessa's face crumpled. Her lawyer asked for appeal consideration. The judge moved to the next case. I walked out into December cold. The courthouse steps were slick with ice. Sandra steadied my elbow. Reporters waited at the bottom. Cameras. Microphones. Questions shouted. How do you feel? Do you forgive your son? Will you visit him in prison? Sandra waved them off. We got into her car. The heater blasted warm air. She drove me home without speaking. At my door she asked the same question. How did I feel? I told her empty. Not sad. Not relieved. Just empty. Like a file closed and archived. Like a case solved but not won. She understood. She always did. She told me the trust would execute fully. All assets transferred by January. $7.5 million to the victims fund. I would keep what was outside the trust. The house. Some savings. A small pension. Enough to live modestly. Enough for a woman who needed very little. I thanked her. She hugged me on the doorstep. Then drove away. Inside the house was dark. I turned on the kitchen light. Made tea I would actually drink. Sat at the table. The news would run the story tonight. Local channels. Maybe national. Elderly woman nearly poisoned by son. $7 million trust saves her life. Justice served. Happy ending. Except it was not happy. It was just over. My phone buzzed. Text from Ruiz. She said the team did good work. She said I was brave. She said justice mattered. I texted back a simple thank you. Set the phone down. Sipped my tea. Outside the window snow began to fall. Small flakes. Thin and scattered. Not enough to accumulate. Just enough to make the world look softer. I thought about Mark in a cell. 8 years minimum before parole. He would be 50 when he got out. Middle-aged. Marked. Unemployable. His life narrowed to whatever came after. I thought about Tessa. 18 years. She would be in her 60s. Everything beautiful about her would fade. In prison. Alone. Paying for a crime that almost worked. I felt something then. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just the cold mathematics of consequence. They had tried to kill me for money. The money was already locked away. Their plan was doomed from conception. Not because I was smart. Because I had been careful. Because I had learned long ago that love without boundaries becomes danger. That family without accountability becomes poison. That protecting yourself was not betrayal. It was survival. The snow stopped. The sky cleared. Stars appeared one by one. I finished my tea, washed the cup, dried it, put it away. Tomorrow would bring paperwork, asset transfers, final signatures, the machinery of justice finishing its work. But tonight I was just tired. Tired of courtrooms. Tired of testimony. Tired of watching my son lie. Then tell the truth. Then disappear behind bars. I walked through the house. Turned off lights. Checked locks. In my bedroom I changed. Got into bed. The sheets were cool and clean. The pillow soft. I closed my eyes. Sleep came easier now. The dreams were fewer. The nights were quieter. Justice had been served. The case was closed. The accounts would settle. And I would keep breathing. One day at a time. In a house that was mine. With money that was enough. And a future that was simply, finally, my own. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Spring came slowly to the house. Crocuses first, then daffodils along the fence. The trust transferred in late January. $7.5 million. Gone from my name forever. Redirected to people I would never meet. Survivors of financial crimes. People whose families used money as a weapon. The paperwork took 3 weeks. Signatures. Notarizations. Wire transfers. Sandra handled most of it. I signed where she told me. Watched numbers move from one account to another. Felt nothing. Not loss. Not regret. Just the quiet satisfaction of arithmetic completed. What remained was mine. The house. Free and clear. A savings account. $43,000. My pension. $1,800 monthly. Social Security. Another $1,200. $3,000 a month. More than enough for a woman alone. More than enough for groceries and utilities. More than enough for a quiet life. I started small rituals. Tuesday mornings at the library. Thursday afternoons at the community garden. I planted tomatoes, basil, zucchini. The soil was dark and rich. My hands remembered this work. From before. From years ago. When my husband was alive. When Mark was young. When life was simpler. Or maybe it was never simple. Maybe I just remembered it wrong. In March I received a letter. From the Victims Fund administrator. She thanked me for the donation. She told me what it would do. Legal aid for elderly victims. Financial counseling for families in crisis. education programs about elder abuse. She said my contribution would help hundreds, maybe thousands over time. She asked if I wanted recognition, a plaque, a dedication ceremony. I wrote back and declined. This was not about recognition. This was about turning poison into something clean. The administrator sent a follow-up. She asked if I would consider speaking. 2 groups, 2 organizations, sharing my story as a warning, as a way to help others recognize signs. I thought about it for a week, then agreed. My first talk was in April. A senior center 3 towns over. 30 people in folding chairs. Coffee in styrofoam cups. Store-bought cookies on paper plates. I told them about the dinner, the symptoms, the policy, the vial. I told them about the trust, how I protected my assets before I needed to. I told them about warning signs, sudden financial requests, isolation from other family members, unusual interest in estate planning, pressure to sign documents quickly. I told them love did not mean blindness, that protecting yourself was not cruel, that family was supposed to be safe. But sometimes it was not. A woman in the back row cried. Afterward she thanked me. She said her daughter was asking for money, more and more each month. She did not know how to say no. I gave her Sandra's number. Told her to call. Told her it was not too late. More talks followed. Senior centers, church basements, library meeting rooms. The same story each time. The same advice. Protect yourself before you need protection. Some people listened. Some thought it could never happen to them. Their children loved them too much. I did not argue. I had thought the same once. In May I received another letter. Prison mail. Mark's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for 3 days. It sat on my kitchen counter. Unopened. Untouched. Finally I opened it. 1 page. Blue ink. Neat writing. He said he was sorry. He said prison gave him time to think. He said he understood now what he had done. Not just legally. Not just morally. He had tried to erase me. To make me a transaction. To turn my life into his solution. He said he did not expect forgiveness. He did not deserve it. He just wanted me to know that he was ashamed, that he would carry this forever, that he hoped I was okay. The letter ended there. No request for money, no ask for visits, just words on paper. I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. I did not write back, not because I was angry, but because I had nothing to say. The conversation was over, had been over since the dinner, since the vial, since the trust. Words would not fix anything. Time would not fix anything. Some breaks were permanent. I accepted that. In June the community college called. They wanted to create a scholarship. The Eleanor Brooks Accounting Scholarship. For first-generation students studying business. I had mentioned it to Sandra months ago. She had made it happen quietly. $50,000 from my savings. The interest would fund 1 student yearly. Full tuition. Books. Supplies. The director asked me to meet the first recipient. A young woman named Maria. 19. Daughter of immigrants. Working 2 jobs while taking classes. Her eyes were tired but determined. She thanked me 3 times. Said this would change her life. Said she would make me proud. I told her to make herself proud. That was all that mattered. We took a photo for the college newsletter. Maria in her work uniform. Me in my gray cardigan. 2 women separated by 50 years. Connected by numbers. By the belief that accounting mattered. That honesty mattered. That precision was a form of love. Summer brought heat and stillness. I watered my garden in the mornings. Tomatoes ripened. Basil flourished. Zucchini grew faster than I could eat it. I gave bags to neighbors. They brought me cookies in return. Small kindnesses. Simple exchanges. The texture of a life rebuilt. In July I found a new routine. Morning coffee on the porch. Reading the paper. Doing the crossword. Afternoon garden work. Evening walks around the block. The same route every time. Past the elementary school. Past the corner store. Past houses I had known for decades. Some days neighbors waved. Some days we talked. Weather. Gardens. Local news. Nothing deep. Nothing heavy. Just the surface of things. It was enough. One evening in August the first stopped walking. Stood in front of my house. Looked at it the way a stranger might. White paint. Black shutters. Small porch. Neat garden. A house that held one person. A woman who had survived. Who had protected herself. Who had turned money into something useful. Who had lost her son but kept her life. It was not the story I imagined. At 20, at 40, at 60, I thought I would grow old with grandchildren. With holiday dinners. With family photos. With the comfort of continuity. Instead I had this. A quiet house. A small garden. Enough money. Enough purpose. Enough. The word settled in my chest. Not heavy. Not light. Just present. I went inside. Made dinner. Soup from a can. Bread I had baked yesterday. Ate at the table alone. Washed my single bowl. Dried it. Put it away. The kitchen was spotless. Everything in its place. The phone rang. Sandra checking in. She did this weekly now. Asked how I was. If I needed anything. If the house was holding up. I told her I was fine. She told me about a new case. Estate planning. Complicated family. She sounded energized by it. By the puzzles. The protections. The way law could build walls. We talked for 20 minutes. Then said goodbye. I sat in my husband's chair. The fabric was wearing thin now. 7 years of sitting. 7 years of remembering. I closed my eyes. Thought about Mark in prison. Thought about Tessa. Thought about the money helping strangers. Thought about Maria studying accounting. Learning to read numbers. Learning to find truth in patterns. Learning what I had spent 40 years knowing. That numbers do not lie. That precision protects. That sometimes the only safety is the safety you build yourself. Outside the window dusk fell. Streetlights flickered on. A car passed. Then another. The world moved forward. I moved with it. Not running. Not hiding. Just walking. One day at a time. In a house that was mine. With a life that was enough. I stood up. Turned off the lights. Went to bed. Tomorrow I would water the garden. Tomorrow I would read the paper. Tomorrow I would keep living. The simple, steady, honest work of being a woman who survived. Who chose herself. Who understood finally that love without boundaries was not love. It was just another form of drowning. And I had learned to swim. Not gracefully. Not easily. But completely. Sleep came quietly. No dreams. No nightmares. Just the dark. Just the quiet. Just me. Still here. Still breathing. Still enough.